guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about my top 12 romances that I read in 2024. Video is a little later than I wanted it to be, but I had a difficult time picking out this list. Because I've talked about how my first 6 months of the year my reading was great. Second half of the year, not so much. So it was kind of a struggle for me, but I did have a great reading year. I intended to do 10 books and I'm doing 12. So that's really great, and I'm just excited for what this year is going to bring. But anyway, let's just get into these books. The first book that we're starting out with is Wild Eyes by Elsie Silver. This is the second book in the Rose Hill series. I really enjoyed Wild Love, and I did have to choose between the two, but this one was my favorite. If I had to choose, Wild Eyes. This book was perfect. This is what I consider a perfect romance. I actually gave this one 6 stars. I really loved Skylar and West. I must admit that Skylar made this book for me. So in this story, we're following Skylar. She's a country music star, and Skylar is very frustrated with her life. She's very unhappy. She feels like she's essentially a prisoner in her own life, and she decides that she's going to go to Rose Hill to kind of escape the craziness and the hustle and bustle of her very busy, hectic life, and she wants to record some music in Rose Hill. She's actually going to work with our hero in the first book with his recording studio to record some music. And when she gets there, she has a hilarious meet cute with our hero West. It is so hilarious. It involves a bear, her trying to take a picture of a bear, our hero thinking that she's absolutely insane. But Skylar ends up staying at our hero's farmhouse, his property, and Skylar and West end up falling for each other. West is a single dad, and he has 2 kids that he co-parents with his ex. The co-parenting was amazing. I really loved that aspect of the book, and I also love the kids. I think that Elsie just knows how to write kids in an authentic, realistic way. She did a fantastic job with that. West is solely focused on his kids and his farm. He's just a very hardworking man. He doesn't mess around with other women. He's just focused on that. But first and foremost, he does know who she is, which I like. Sometimes in these romances, the hero doesn't know or something like that. And he knows who Skylar is. He's actually quite a fan, but he treats her like a normal human being. They have hilarious banter. Elsie writes the best banter, and I think those are the books that really shine to me. She just does it so well. I feel like it's natural for her to just write excellent banter. But Skylar and West have a lot of chemistry. Like I said, their banter is amazing. So they kind of enter into a friends with benefits situation, which is the perfect setup for both of them because Skylar is going back to her life, and West will be, you know, he's a dad. He's going to get back to his life, but things don't go as planned. And these two end up falling very deeply in love with each other. Now, West was a wonderful book boyfriend. Okay, he was such a great hero. I loved how supportive he was of Skylar, how attentive he was. He was a wonderful father. He was so hardworking. He was sexy. We know how Elsie Silver's men gets down. But the highlight of this book for me was Skylar. Skylar was such an amazing female character and a heroine, and I just loved reading her story. She had a really great story in here. Her character development was amazing. The romance part of this book was fantastic. I loved the pacing of this story, and I thought the romance was so natural and sexy and fun, but it was honest, and they had some really beautiful, heartfelt moments. But Skylar's development in the story was one that I loved so much. Skylar's parents has managed her career, and instead of being her parents, they have chosen to manage her career over being her parents. She hasn't had a lot of love and affection, which is so important to anybody to have and experience. She feels like she's been taken advantage of. She feels like she has no control over her life, over her career. She doesn't even know if she enjoys singing and if it's her passion. And so being able to be away from all that and just kind of have this peace in Rose Hill was life-changing for her. She gets to see Wes be a really wonderful father, which I think kind of healed an inner child within herself, but also she's able to kind of get a clear head from everything that she's experienced and understand that she has been mistreated by so many and taken advantage of by so many people in her life. So seeing her find someone who supports her for her and not for Skylar, the country music star, but just Skylar as a human being was really beautiful. But also seeing her take control of her life and her career and standing up for herself, it was just a really, really beautiful journey, and I enjoyed every second of this story, and this was just such an amazing journey to go on with Skylar and West. So next we have Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. Abby Jimenez is one of my favorite romance writers. I want to do a video all about my favorite romance writers, not authors or authors I enjoy, but there are some romance authors that just write so beautifully, and I'm in awe of the romance books that they're able to write, and Abby Jimenez is one of them. Now, she definitely blends romance and women's fiction, and so some people might say this is not true romance, but I'm totally fine with it. I'm totally happy with it. I'm very satisfied by her books, but this book, absolutely fantastic. So in this story, we're following Justin. Now, Justin thinks that he's cursed because every person that he's dated, gone on a few dates with, after they break up, they meet their soulmate after they break up. And he decides that he's going to go on to write a thread on Reddit about this and this theory of him being cursed. And Emma's best friend finds it and she's like, hey, this is so funny. You experience the same thing. So Emma decides to reach out to Justin, and they have hilarious banter and chemistry right off the bat. Both start to think like, wouldn't it be funny if we date each other, go on a few dates, and then we break out? That would kind of like break the curse, and after they break up, they both be able to find their soul. Now, Emma is a travel nurse, and she is never in one place. She's always traveling. Her best friend is also a travel nurse, so they're always together. And Emma has plans to go, I believe it's to Hawaii, for the summer, but she talks her best friend into going to Minnesota because this is where Justin is. And she's like, we can just do this just for the summer. She just wants to try this out and see if, you know, this would work. So she goes to Minnesota for the summer and meets up with Justin, and her and Justin go on dates. I loved the way that Justin was so creative with the dates because, you know, they have to really see this through for this to work, to try to like break the curse. And I loved all the dates they went on. I love to see dates in romance books. I feel like that's so outdated. We never see people going on dates, and it was just so hilarious. Their romance is so beautiful and sweet and pure. Like, they just have an easy, natural dynamic, and I really loved reading about Justin and Emma. But this book definitely takes a turn because this book starts out, it's like fun, it's like we're having a good time, it's a good summer, and then bam, Abby hits us, as she always does, with some raw realness in her books. Justin and Emma both have a lot going on in their personal lives. So Emma has a very complicated relationship with her mother. I do believe there's trigger warnings in this book. If you listen to the audiobook, I'm not sure if they're in that, so definitely look at your triggers. But Emma has an absentee mother, and we get to see her mother come into play, and it's very frustrating. Like, your heart breaks for Emma and everything that she goes through with her mom, and it bleeds into her relationships. Justin has a lot going on with his family. His mom is actually going to be going to prison for X amount of years, and he's going to be responsible for his siblings. And so when things start to get real for them, both like, okay, this is getting real, and all this stuff is happening in their lives. Like, their relationship, things are really good and things are going very well, and they're falling for one another, but their life is falling apart all around them, and it's bleeding into their own relationship and what's going on between them. But as always, Abby's heroes are amazing, and I do think that Abby tends to write her heroines super flawed and her heroes not as much. But I did really enjoy Justin in this book. He is a perfect man, okay? And the way he's so loving to Emma is really, really beautiful. I loved it. I also love the female friendship between Emma and her best friend. She's a very, very important person in Emma's life, and I really loved her character. She is there for Emma. She's very honest with Emma, and I really enjoyed just that representation of the female friendships. But this is a beautiful, heartbreaking, emotional read, but it's also full of really beautiful moments and a really amazing romance that just made me really appreciate this book. And I think that Abby does a good job of blending romance and women's fiction to where I don't feel like it's not a true romance book or anything. I think she blends the two perfectly, but I can understand why some people don't love that, but it really works for me. Also, this book is a part of her, I think it's just called Part of Your World, but the first book is Part of Your World, the second book is Yours Truly. Both of those books have been on my favorites, so 3 years in a row her books have been on my favorites of the year list, and I loved seeing those connect with this one. And it's just such a payoff. If you've read the other two, you will love this one, and if you don't read it, it's okay, but I just think that you'll really appreciate it more if you've read the other two books in the series. But this is just a really beautiful book, and I'm just completely blown away and amazed at everything that I read by Abby Jimenez. So next we have Bride by by Ali Hazelwood. Ooh, I should have chosen the paperback because this one is reflective, and that's going to be really annoying. So it's not shining at you guys the entire time. It is. Okay, well, this is the Steamy Lit edition, and it's so beautiful, but it's too shiny. We're going to put it down. Okay, so this is a really great paranormal romance that Ali came out with in 2024. I was pleasantly surprised by how much I enjoyed this book. This one just gave me the nostalgia of all the OG paranormal romances, and I really loved it. Ali really knows her formula. Her books are always kind of have like kind of STEM element in them. The heroine's smaller, the hero's huge. She just kind of knows her formula, and I think that she wrote this one in a way that's really approachable to people who don't read paranormal romances, and also to people who love her books. I think this is a book that a lot of people can enjoy and read, especially if you're not really into paranormal romances. This one has some great world building. I definitely want to see her tackle into this more and dive into it more and flesh it out some more. And she really just reached the surface and put down the foundation in this story. But this is as I said, a paranormal romance, and this is essentially about two people who enter into a marriage of convenience, avoid conflict between the werewolves and the vampires. That's the basic setup of the story. Now, Misery, our heroine Misery, has a little bit of ulterior motive for entering into this marriage of convenience that I'm not going to give away, but there is a mystery element to the story. In this book, we really get the POV from Misery. We get just like one sentence into each introduction to the chapter, which I thought was very interesting, of Lo's POV. So I definitely would have loved Lo's POV more, but I love the found family in this book, the werewolves, the pack, the way that they love each other. They're there for each other. They are truly a family. So seeing the difference between how the vampires are and how the werewolves is, I really enjoyed that. Seeing Misery, because Misery has really been separated from the vampires. She's actually been more so around humans, and she doesn't feel very accepted by the vampires. To marry a werewolf, I mean, it's not something that she wants, but she really doesn't have a choice. It's something that her dad set up for her. But when she gets there and she realizes like werewolves are not what vampires think and how people view them, she really gets to experience what it's like to be in a true family. And her and Lo, the romance, I personally really loved it. Lo's has a younger sister. I loved his relationship with his sister. Lo was just a really great hero. He's also the leader of his pack. He was a great leader. I just really enjoyed this story a lot. It had a little bit of some twists going on there, and I just thought it was so fun. And I also really enjoyed the audiobook. I didn't put it in my favorite audiobooks, but it is really great on audio. Overall, I'm just very much impressed with what Ali was able to do. I think she really made this paranormal romance her own. It had her signature style, but it was also fresh and new, and I hope we get more in the series because I personally really enjoyed it, and there are some characters that I was interested in, and I hope we get more in this world because, like I said, There is some great world building in here, and I think it could be fleshed out a little bit more. Fragile Sanctuary by Catherine Cowles. So this is the first book in her Sparrow Falls series. Sparrow Falls is my new favorite series by Catherine Cowles, and it was difficult to pick a favorite book because I love them all, but I had to go with Fragile Sanctuary because it was so incredible, and it was a really great start to an impeccable series. This is, in my opinion, her best work yet, although I am reading her newest book right now and I really love it. So we will see. But I think this is her best written series. It's her steamiest series. It is just absolutely fantastic. I think the suspenseful elements are really well done. They're definitely shocking me. This one in particular was just really, really great. So in this one, we're following Anson. Anson is an ex-FBI profiler. He's living in Sparrow Falls, and he actually works with Rhodes' brother in construction while he's working on her childhood home. Heron Rhodes is rebuilding her home after a tragic accident that happened years ago. Her entire family died in this house fire, changed Rhodes' life forever. Someone doesn't want Rhodes to rebuild this home, and she is put in danger, and when this happens, Anson can't help but step in and help Rhodes. Now, Anson is a very reclusive, grumpy man, okay? He's been living in Sparrow Falls for a little bit, but no one really knows anything about him. Like I said, he's very reclusive to himself, but he can't help but be drawn to Rhodes. There's just something about Rhodes that he can't help but like to be attracted to. And so, and I love those romances. I love those romances where one of the characters is reclusive, but they can't help but like be around, you know, the other person. It's absolutely the setup in this one. But Anson has a lot of demons inside. He's fighting a lot. He is carrying a very, very, very heavy burden, and so he has a lot of trauma and things that he hasn't unpacked. Rhodes also has trauma, and from what has just happened to her, it's reopening a lot of wounds for her, and obviously she's trying to rebuild her family home, and that comes with a lot of memories. So both of these characters find a lot of healing within one another. What Rhodes has that Anson doesn't is her family. So after Rhodes lost her family, and she has foster siblings, and that's the entire series, we're following all of her other siblings. I loved the found family. It is the best part of this series. Really, really emotional, heartbreaking story, and the suspense is so good. Okay, so next we have Lights Out by Nevessa Allen. If there was any book that surprises me about how much I loved it, it is definitely this one. When I started this book, I didn't expect to love it so much, but this one took me by surprise, and this was absolutely one of my favorite experiences that I've had, reading experiences this year in 2024. First and foremost, the audiobook is absolutely fantastic. I've talked about it. I think I said in that one it's in dual narration, but it's in duet narration. It is such a good audiobook. Dark romance, honestly, there's a lot of dark things happening. I'm not gonna say take that with a grain of salt. Okay, I think if you're going into this one for a true gritty dark romance, that's not what you're gonna get. So in this story, we're following Allie. Allie is a trauma nurse, and she has a very, very hectic, crazy job. And so something that she likes to do to unwind is watch TikTok like all of us, but specifically she loves to watch masked men on TikTok. It's her new thing. One night she decides that she is going to send like a video or a picture, I can't remember which one, to an ex hookup and just ask, like, would you be into this? And, you know, he's like, no, you know, he turns her down. He's not interested. He's seeing someone. But what Allie doesn't know is that her ex, his roommate, is actually the man that she's obsessed with on TikTok, the masked man. And when he finds this out, he decides that he's going to casually break into Allie's house, record a video, put it on TikTok so she knows that he was in her house. So when she sees the video, she's freaking out. And this is like where the book starts. It's a crazy start. Our hero, Josh, is so sweet. Okay, I loved him so much. He's definitely a complex character and a complex hero. So Josh lives a very reclusive life. So his dad was a serial killer, and there's been a lot of documentaries about him, and he just tries to stay out of the spotlight because He also looks like him, and he gets that a lot when people make the connection of who his dad is. Hacker, he works in cybersecurity. He's been able to make a lot of money for himself, and with his job, he's able to just kind of stay in. But he really struggled with this, and he definitely feels isolated. So he started this account where he's masked and he has a lot of followers. And when he becomes obsessed with Allie and very interested in Allie. And she's very open to this, and they have a very good time. Things go bonkers. Things get crazy in this book. There's a lot that happens. It is a fun, crazy, fast-paced ride, but the romance was really great. There's actually a lot of communication between Allie and Josh, and I really enjoyed that a lot. Their romance was really, really great. They fall really hard for each other. Josh is hilarious. They were just like perfect for one another, and I love it, and I cannot recommend it enough. If you need something that's a little unique, really sexy and fun, this is your go-to. Okay, so the next book is Business Casual by B.K. Borison. So Love Light Farms is a very, very beloved series, and I don't love the series as much as everyone else, which is surprising because I love small town romances, but this is just not one of my favorites. But this book made me get it. I think I got it. I missed it with the other ones, but Business Casual is honestly one of my favorite romance books of all time. This one it worked for me, and I connected with it. This is a one-night stand book, and I sometimes struggle with one-night stand romances, but this is definitely one of the best ones, and definitely one of the best that I have ever read. This story is about Nova, and Nova is a very independent woman. She's actually opening up her own tattoo shop in this small town. She's really excited. It's all that she's focused on, and like I said, very independent on her own. Starts out with the wedding of Luke and Stella, which they're the characters in the first book in the Love Life Farm series. They're getting married, and Nova's sister is like, look, you really need to like get out, you know, do something. You're young, you know. And while she's there, she sees Charlie. Charlie is Stella's brother, and Charlie actually asks Nova to dance. Now, Charlie is very flirtatious with Nova, but she never really to it. But she starts to kind of do that, and he's kind of surprised. Now, these two end up having a one-night stand. She invites him over to her house after the wedding, and Charlie is actually going to be staying in town for a little while, helping out with Luke and Stella's farm while they're on their honeymoon. So these two enter into a friends with benefits situation, and as always, things don't go as planned because feelings get involved. We know how that goes. She's the one with like the hard exterior. It's really hard to kind of break down her walls, and we really get to see Charlie break them down, and she lets him in, and it's really beautiful. The romance is so comforting, so sweet, and B.K. Borison's writing is really, really strong and really great in this one. I just loved the vulnerability between these two characters and the way that they're able to open up. And I think this is when one night stand, friends with benefits romances really shine, as we really get to see the characters together and like the after moments of the hookup. We get to see these characters really have these one-on-one moments that really show us how their connection is growing from just physical to something that's real and emotional. And I love the development of that. And it's something that I don't get to see a lot of these days, but when it's done right, it is amazing. And B.K. Borison wrote one of the best one-night stand romances that I've read. It's just such a beautiful romance. I love their chemistry. They're honestly perfect for one another. I was rooting for them to find their HEA, and it is a very, very beautiful journey. Next, we have The Vows by Jessica Joyce. So Jessica Joyce is a new favorite author of mine. I just really loved her holiday novella that she came out with last year, but this was my first full-length novel by her, and her writing is just perfect for me. It's exactly what I'm looking for. Now, this is a second chance romance, and I really enjoy second chance romances, but I'm very picky about them because sometimes the authors do like the past and present thing. Sometimes that works for me. A lot of the time it doesn't, because I'm very particular about how it's done. And this second chance romance is one of the best that you will read. Okay, this is like God tier second chance romance, okay? So in this story, we're following our heroine, Georgia. Now, Georgia's best friend is getting married, her best guy friend, and she's really, really excited to celebrate her best friend getting married. But what she's not looking forward to is seeing her ex, Eli. Now, Georgia, Eli, and her guy best friend, or have all grown up together. They all grew up, had the same friend group, and Georgia and Eli ended up dating. Unfortunately, they did not work out. Broken up for 5 years. They've been able to have this friendly relationship when they see each other, but now they're going to be spending more time together, and she's definitely not looking forward to it. And her guy best friend doesn't truly know what happened between them. He thinks that they just ended on a good note and everything's okay. Still a lot of hurt and leftover feelings there. So they see each other. There's so much tension. This book is so angsty because there's unfinished business between these two. Now, Jordan and Eli spend a lot more time than expected together because everything that's going wrong with their best friend's wedding that could possibly go wrong is going wrong. And these two have to step in to help their best friend so he can have, you know, this wedding that him and his fiance are dreaming of. And these two really have a lot of unsettled business and unsettled feelings. They really have to face these to, you know, pull off this wedding. It was so raw. It just felt so raw and real. It felt like I was really reading about these two people who still love each other and they're so hurt by what happened. Something that I really enjoyed was reading about how our hero took responsibility for what happened. There's no cheating or anything that happened, but takes responsibility for what happened and has worked on himself to become a better man. That includes therapy, and there's a scene where our hero actually has a panic attack or anxiety attack, one of the two, and Georgia steps in to help him, and it's a moment that really brings these two characters close together. But, you know, exploring what happened in their relationship and seeing how they can make it work now. You know, people change, people grow, and that's exactly what has happened with George and Eli. But in able to get there, they have to talk about the hurt and pain and what happened, and they have to let that go. And that's really something that's really, really hard to do, is to let someone in who hurt you so many years ago. This was just very, very beautiful to read, and I loved their journey of them reconnecting and, you know, finding the courage to be able to give this another chance. Only in fiction do we do that, but when it is done well, second chance romances are the absolute best, and this was so, so good. If you love angst, if you love a lot of tension, this is for you. This was a masterclass in how to write a perfect second chance romance. We have Unsteady by Peyton Corinne. If you like the Boys of Tolman series, specifically if you like Johnny and Shannon's story, this one definitely reminds me, gives me those same vibes. I also found that our heroine Sadie gave me the same vibes as Lily from the Addicted series. But this is a college new adult romance. Our hero Reese, he is a hockey player, and here he experienced an accident on the ice. He took a really hard hit and he has a concussion, and from that he is struggling with nightmares and panic attacks, and he's just really having a hard time getting back out there and, you know, getting back to the same player that he once was. So one early morning he's practicing, or he's trying to get back out on the ice, but he has a panic attack. And Sadie is our heroine Sadie, she is a figure skater, and she's actually there on the ice as well, and she actually ends up talking and helping Reese out through his panic attack. Comes out of this moment is a friendship. They skate, and also they enter into a friends with benefits situation. But Reese starts to develop feelings for Sadie, and Sadie is trying her hardest to keep these boundaries up and to keep this wall up, because Sadie has the weight of the world on her shoulders. Sadie has younger brothers that she takes care of, she's responsible for. Her dad is just nowhere to be found, really. He's an alcoholic, and she's trying to keep up with school, keep up with figure skating, and also take care of her brothers. She doesn't have time for love. She doesn't even really know what that is. And Reese is falling, and he's falling very, very hard, and he does not care what she has going on in her life. I really loved reading about these two, you know, young love is really beautiful and they're each other's first loves, and I love that. But I love seeing these two people lean on each other because both of them are going through a lot. And mental health is really big in this book. They both kind of take care of each other. There's a lot of caretaking in this book. I also love Reese's family and the way that they help Sadie and her family. It was just a really beautiful book, and Peyton Corinne is a really great writer. I'm so excited for Unloved. It has a lot of heart and heartbreaking things, but Peyton and Corinne definitely put our hearts back together at the end. Is Before Us by Julie Ann. So this book is so interesting to me because I have tried to read Julie Ann in the past and I have not been able to read any of her books. I've DNF'd every single one I've read. But this one worked for me. Now, first of all, I think I'm pretty sure the narrator of this audiobook is Charlotte North, or Noth or something, and I love her. I really enjoy her narration, but this book is so good. I can't even say too much about it, or else I will give it away, and I just think you should experience it. I think you should read it. You should check your triggers, because this might have some triggering stuff in here, you know, and I'm gonna give one for like sickness, cancer, loss of a loved one. Story about soulmates, losing someone, and what that means for finding love again, and also what it means to love someone and maybe it's not the right time, and at the same time you still have life to live and you still have so many things that you haven't done in your life yet. You do love someone and that other person has lost someone that they love. I know what I'm saying, confusing, but this book is about love and experiencing love and what that means and how it exists. It can happen in more than one way. I don't know. I'm not explaining this very well, but I don't want to tell you guys what this book is about because it will give it away. And I just think you should go on the journey of this book. I just think you should. I went on the journey. I went into this book not knowing a lot at all, and I ended up loving it so much. It ended up being one of my favorites of the year, obviously. Also one of my favorite books. It was so good, and Julie Ann's writing is spectacular in this book. She writes very steamy emotional romances, and this one is underrated, and it is so good. Very angsty and emotional. So if you love those two things, then you should absolutely pick this book up and give it a chance. So next we have The Wolf and the Wildflower by Stacey Reid. This is a historical romance. This is one of the only historical romances I read this year. I can count on one hand how many historical romances I read, which is awful. That's terrible. There's no reason why I haven't read more historicals, and I want to change that this year. I definitely want to make sure I'm supporting the historical romance subgenre. It's such a strong backbone of the romance genre, and I want to support the authors who are out here writing those really amazing books. This is one of the most romantic stories I've read. Stacey Reid is one of the most romantic writers. I just love, love, love her writing. In this story, we're following our hero who has been, he was lost in the wilderness. I believe it's for a decade, and he suddenly returns. His family is so excited to have him back, but, you know, being in the wilderness, living in the wilderness for that long has changed him as a person. He is not the same person that they once knew, and they are having a really hard time accepting this person, and they, you know, they can't have people thinking that he's mad and that he's crazy, and they need to kind of get this under control really quickly. So they actually, and her father, who both work in psychology, to help. Now, our heroine is living as a man, and let me explain. Her mom had very difficult pregnancies and getting pregnant and staying pregnant, and she had very difficult births, and she had not had a son, and her husband really desperately wanted a son. And so when she has our heroine, her midwife steps in and is like, look, just go along with it, because you cannot get pregnant again. Like, you will not make it if you get pregnant, and you will not make it through another birth. And so our heroine just lives her life as a man, and through this she gets to experience a lot of things, just For example, she gets to work, and she gets to work with her father. So her and her father are tasked with helping our hero, and they have to do this in like a very short amount of time, and to try to like get him back on track and figure out what's going on with him. Now, what I love so much is that our hero knew right away when they met that our heroine was a woman. And this book had its moments where it was really fun and bonkers, and the plot is bonkers, the plot is crazy, but Stacey Reid was able to pull it off, and she did such a fantastic job. And the romance is just so beautiful because there's a lot going on with both of our characters. He doesn't want this life, you know, he loved the quiet life that he had in the wilderness, and now he's back in society, and it's a lot. He's having a very hard time adjusting, and he doesn't feel accepted by his family. And then we have our heroine who is maybe starting to wonder like what it's like to actually live her life as she truly is, and you know what it's like to be a woman, because she's never gotten to just live her true life. And both of these characters really accept the other person for who they really are. You know, the discussions of a role of a woman, and if she was to do this, you know, she's afraid of how her father would react, and also all of the things that she gets to do, her passion for her work, she won't get to do that anymore. So those like internal battles that both of our characters are struggling with, it was really beautiful romance, and I really enjoyed the journey that Stacey Reid took us on with this book. It's a funny story by Emily Henry. Book was just so good. It's one of those books that I read at the perfect time in my life. In this story, our heroine Daphne is dumped by her fiance. Peter breaks up with her for his best friend. Now this really puts Daphne in an awful position, because she actually recently moved to this town with her fiance, and she has no friends, she has nowhere to live. So she ends up in a temporary living situation with Miles, who is the woman that is now with her ex-fiance boyfriend. So now they're living together. The two are living together. Their exes are now together, and these two, they don't really talk to each other. They don't really have anything in common. They don't interact with each other. But one night changes that, and they end up just kind of opening up to each other about what's been going on and how they're feeling, and they're both heartbroken and confused, and they decide that they're going to get their exes back. So these two kind of like fake date to make their exes jealous. But things change and things become very real. Daphne, per usual, Emily Henry always has some kind of bookish something in her books, and our heroine is a librarian. Really enjoyed Daphne's character and her background, and we learn more about her. I really enjoyed her character. But Miles really stole the show for me, because he is absolutely Nick Miller coded from New Girl. If you like Nick Miller, you will love Miles. I definitely think that he made the book for me, to be honest. It was just so sweet and caring, and he's so layered. You really get to see who he really is. He struggles with like opening up and showing that part of him. And Daphne is wonderful as well. Her love for books is obviously something that I connected with her about, but you know, she really covers herself in this story. She kind of got lost in her relationship with her ex, because you know, she moved to this new city with him, and you know, throughout the book she actually plans on leaving, but she ends up falling in love with her new city, and she loves her job at the bookstore, and she starts to make friends. And you know, Emily Henry always gives us really great side characters. I just feel like a book is really well-rounded when I get a full story, and you know, seeing our heroine kind of go on her own individual journey of discovering herself and finding out things about herself without being in that relationship was really beautiful as well. And seeing these two together, wonderful together. They have a very natural relationship. It just felt very real. You know, I always feel that when I read about characters who seem so real to me, I can really just get completely lost in the story. And that's exactly what happened with Funny Story. I cried, I laughed, I had the best time. It was so beautifully written. I always love Emily Henry's writing. She wrote her butt off in this book. I want to say this takes place in Michigan. I'm pretty sure it does. I'll double check that. I could be wrong. But the town, the setting in this book is also a character of its own. This is truly like two people who are opposites, but they truly like complement each other in the best way. Those slow burn, kind of gradual, those romances, and she builds up the tension so well. It was entertaining. It was addictive. I couldn't put this book down, but it was also very emotional, and I connected with it, and I loved it so much. So I cannot wait to see what she's going to write next, but this was just, she knocked it out of the park with this one. Last but not least, we have Redeeming Six by Chloe Walsh. I can't hold these books anymore. Spent my last day of the year listening to this book. I had some family over for New Year's Eve, and I spent the entire day just listening to this book. Not really, this is a long book, so I started it like a couple days before. I finished this book on Christmas Eve, and what a treat. What a treat to finally finish Joey and Aoife's story. Sometime this year, it may have been like in May or something, and I just couldn't finish it. It was really hard for me to read. It's a hard story. It's even harder than Johnny and Shannon's story, and it was tough, but it was beautiful. And I did really love it, but I was like, okay, I'm not ready to finish this yet. It's so hard for me to read. It's really hard being in this house, in the Lynch's house, and, you know, it's hard. We know what happens because, you know, you have to read Johnny and Shannon's story. You have to read the series in order. Maybe you can read Taming Seven, but I think you'd be doing a disservice to yourself, and I don't really think it makes sense to not read the series in order. I mean, if you read just these two before you read Binding, it just won't make sense. You have to read this one in order. I can't talk much about Redeeming Six because it is a second book, but this is one of my favorite romances of all time. This is a work of art. Absolutely beautiful. Raw. One of the most heart-wrenching stories I've ever read. This was so difficult for me to read. Joey is one of my favorite characters that I've read, and I am so grateful that this story exists. It touched me. I feel like it changed me. It's incredible. And at the end, I was like, okay, I want to reread this series and take notes. And now that I know what happens, I can go through it. But it was just truly, truly heartbreaking. Heartbreaking is not even the word. Unbelievable. Joey and Aoife, their love. Oh my gosh. The way that Aoife is so devoted to Joey. They have a beautiful friendship and a beautiful love. And their journey is so difficult. It was so fought for. And I was just so happy to get to the end because it made all the pain, everything you go through worth it. The way that this book ends, it's everything. I could like cry right now talking about it. It is so worth all the pain. Everything that you go through, it's worth it to see Joey and Aoife get their happily ever after. Man, this book is a lot. The series is heavy. It is very, very heavy. In particular, we're dealing with child abuse in general. There's like childhood SA that's discussed in this one, alcoholism, drug addiction. It's a heavy, I mean, all those things are extremely heavy, and this is not an easy, and suicidal idealization, talk of suicide, like this is very, very, very heavy stuff that we're dealing with in this book. And I just want to give that warning to make sure that everyone knows what they're getting themselves into. It's not a series I recommend to everybody, but if you can handle the content, it's one of the best romance series that you will ever read in your life. Like, I dare you to talk bad about these books to me. No, I'm just kidding. I respect everyone's opinions, but this is probably my favorite book of the entire year. It's worth all of the tears and the heart. It was just worth it all. It was worth it. And it's beautiful. But thank you all so much for watching my video. I had a great reading year, and I'm just really excited to see what all I'm going to read in 2025. And yeah, definitely let me know your favorite books. Do we share any? Let me know. I would love to know. Please leave me a star emoji. Leave me stars. I don't know. Leave me stars. Why? I don't know. Leave me just some kind of star emoji to me. Let me know that you've made it to the very end. Thank you all so much for watching my video. I always appreciate your support. There's so much content to come this year. I hit a snag in the second half of the year and I really haven't been consistent, but I am aiming to be very consistent in my posting, and I have a lot of content and things that I want to do. So definitely be patient with me um, in that. But I really appreciate you all, and it has just been so fun. I've been on YouTube now for a year, and I just have so much content that I want to make, and this is going to be just a really great year. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.